Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of Disruption Talks. And on this Tuesday, that judging by the weather I've got outside, at least in Europe, is kind of cloudy and rainy, we will bring you some sunshine by talking about a topic that everybody loves: banking and tax advisory. And of course, I'm being a little bit facetious here, but it's a fact of life. Just like the old saying goes about death and taxes, these are things that you simply need to take care of. And with the growth and scale of businesses that we're experiencing today, and not in a stopping or a slowing down rate, it just needs to be not only taken care of now, but thought about in a very proactive and future-proofing manner. And joining us today to discuss this is Christopher from Kontist. Hi, Christopher.
Hello, and if I may say so, calling from Berlin, the sun is shining here, so it's not rainy all over Europe. Welcome, though.
Okay. So we start the episode with a little bit of jealousy. Okay, fine. That's completely okay with me. Okay, so you're from Berlin. I'm over here from Warsaw, so we're not that far apart. So yeah, let's dive right in. But before we talk about Kontist, let's get to know you personally. So serial entrepreneur 8 times at least, and now at Kontist, right? But that's me giving you an intro. Please improve on that intro and give it your author intro.
Okay, I'll try to do so, but you already, summarized pretty important things. Let's maybe also add to that also am a dad of 4 daughters, actually. So,
Okay.
there's also a private life to it now. Yes, what else to add? I'm kind of an online guy, always have been, lived like 20 years abroad. Most of these companies, actually, I only came back for Kontist to Germany. So most of these companies are actually set up abroad. Little fun fact, my very first company I set up was actually a cocktail bar here in Berlin. It still exists in Mauerpark for those who want to go. It's called Schön Wetter, nice weather. So back to the topic of the beginning.
Okay.
So why is this interesting? Because actually there I had to do we were 3 guys at university, and build everything ourselves. And I was responsible for basically accounting and finance. And although I've studied business and supposedly know something about how it is to set up, read financial statements of Microsoft, McDonald's, and the likes, I had not the slightest clue on how to deal with a small kind of cocktail bar and stuff like this. And that has become actually the red line through my life. Is really because I've done like a lot of mistakes. We got a tax audit the year after that was really, really painful. Lots of problems are around this. Building the bar and serving the cocktails was not the challenge, but actually all the administrational nightmares around that. And ever since, I've actually never. It's the very first time now at Kontist as the CEO that I'm actually employed. For all the rest of the time, I've always basically been invoicing my own company. So also lived the freelance experience. And I tell you, I mean, all this stupidity which we have to deal with on this level, that has really caused me then to found since I think 15 years ago, really software tools to help the one-man show. First an accounting system, now basically a bank, a tax advisory, bookkeeping tools, and so forth. But it's really the red line through my professional life, helping the self-employed with tooling and many other things.
I'm guilty of needing such help personally. Sole proprietorship has been an interesting journey as opposed to employment. And of course, congrats on sort of finally, if I may use that word, reaching the moment where you are gainfully employed at your own company and not in the mix of invoice
I used actually 3 lawyers because I did not want to be employed. I have a lot of talk, of course, I talked at least to 1,000 freelancers in my life due to my professions in previous companies. And I mean, we have typically a lot of things in common in the sense that we really dislike the idea of being employed, and really that's our model, our choice of life, to be this kind of, to supposedly be free, right? this is just a mindset question, I understand, and stuff like this. But for a lot of people, it's really, I think, as difficult as it might be for some hardcore employees to understand, that you want to be freelance. It is as difficult for a freelancer which is successful in doing their thing to understand and why he or she should be going back to employment. So for me, that has always been the striving thing. Want to be on your own, so to speak.
That too, and it's always the saying goes that it's hunger that sprouts creativity, right? And similarly, it's tax regulations that sprout solutions, just like the ones that we're discussing here, in a large extent. So, what does a day in the life of a CEO of Kontist look like, other than talking to 1,000 freelancers?
No, but that is actually quite an important one. How does a day look like? First of all, to keep that also a bit informational beyond the business side and stuff, because my day typically starts late. I'm like everybody says, successful CEOs need to be there at 5 in the morning. I'm more the guy which is there at 5 in the morning, but still because he's awake from the day before, right? So, for me, it's kind of a later start, but then the biggest activities I actually do is, of course, like talking to people. One of my speciality is the I learned that in Scandinavia, the classical walk and talk, if you're familiar with that. So if possible, and of course we are moving into a remote first environment at Kontist as well, so situation during Corona has changed quite a lot, but typically I was actually 10 kilometers 6 hours a day at least outside, even if it's raining or the sun is shining and stuff like this. And I was talking to people. I have my route here in the center of Berlin where I always go, where the wall used to stand. So that's really my thing. If I have phone conversations, if I have interviews, job interviews is very helpful. People get much less nervous, for example, if they are actually walking during a process like this. So my day, very, very unusual, I would say, for my kind of position and job and stuff like this, used to be very much like outside on the fresh air, talking to people. During Corona, this has changed quite a bit, of course. So now I have also my 16 hours of screen time. It's not necessarily at all what I think is enjoyable and what I like and stuff like this. But I do understand that if we cannot see each other, then at least it's better to be in front of a monitor and at least have some visual contact compared to basically just like doing everything on the phone and stuff like this. So that has actually during Corona changed a lot. But now we are back to, most people have been vaccinated around here and stuff like this. So I get at least some movement during the day also now again.
I was thinking that you're going to tell me how with Corona you just spoke to more people and walked more and cycled more. Because I mean that's the most human sort of response, right? Whenever you get a phone call, you walk around your entire place and just let yourself outside, right?
But that's not, yeah. But the point is, so if you get a phone call, it's true. But we have our office here at Kontist at the ground floor, and in the office I have my shoes on and stuff like this. So when I get a phone call, I just go outside and immediately walk. Privately, back home, I live on the 5th floor and stuff like this. I need to take the elevator. The connection gets a bit bad at that moment and stuff like this.
Sure.
So it's not. And in the house, it's not the same thing. I mean, I really walk. I mean, at some the best day before Corona, I think I did like on a regular walking day 17 kilometers just walking. I mean, right, and that try to do that at home. I mean, you will feel like a tiger in your cage, right?
Yeah. I mean, a treadmill seems like an interim solution. Okay, so I don't want to give you I don't want to throw you the easy ball question of has having been a serial entrepreneur helped you with your current venture? Because the answer is yes, I'm sure. It's not that you'll tell me no, but can you share some things that surprised you yourself? Because the process of trial and error and continuous learning, and I didn't make the same mistakes that I did in my first, second, third venture. Give me something that I'm not expecting, hoping you have something like that.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, first of all, is really very delightful to do this so many times, right? I mean, we are typically very stressed, and I am again now, because at the point where Kontist is right now, that's the biggest I've brought a company. So in a sense, I'm swimming in, for me, very much unknown territory. But for me, starting a company, I don't think there's anything I love more than that, right? Because it's really the sweet spot, the cool thing, it's like, give me a white sheet of paper and start something. I did also startup weekends and all these kind of things, right? It's really, really fun. So I can only kind of tell to people, do it. Don't worry if something that doesn't really go fast. Be fast, like also with your founding thing, because you're learning a lot of things. But for me, I think the most what I've learned the most, without kind of giving little tricks about accounting and financing and all that kind of things, which of course you get over the years as well. But what really the main lesson, I think, is that I started to appreciate people much more, my staff, my folks, which do this with me, than actually in my early days. In my early days, coming from university and stuff, I guess I was obsessed about solving a problem, and I was just like, can you not see it? Come on, we're doing this together. Like, let's solve this problem. I'm exaggerating, but I didn't care to that extent. Was that person like super happy or not? Because I was kind of under this belief, I'm completely obsessed about solving this problem, so are you. Then you must be like happy working with me, and everything is cool, right? And that I really noticed, that's of course not the case, right? I can try to inspire people to follow my idea and stuff like this, but I cannot take for granted all this kind of thing. So really at Kontist, to the last extent, after like my now being the eighth company and stuff like this, I really try to say, okay, I want to make this kind of the best startup to work for in Berlin, from a human side, from a people perspective, right. So there's a lot of I'm not going to name anybody here, but there's a lot of examples out there of big startup environments and stuff like this, which are well known here in Berlin, of being very much like asshole cultures and stuff like this, where I do think that the few people owning them and stuff like this have made a lot of money. That is well known, and they are pretty well known. But the people there, it's not something where people look back with pride and basically say, "You look, this was the coolest place. I learned so much." And so people learn something there as well. I think it's after university, it's great to jump into and stuff like this. But I don't think that it's at least from my philosophy point of view, something I would like to stand for. It's really a different kind of, you can be successful and you can also create a culture which is, from a human perspective, very, very different. And that's something which I wasn't born with. I really, through my startups, understood more and more that, the better the people feel, the better kind of the culture is in a company and stuff like this, the more successful you will ultimately also be. So that, I think, is my key learning.
Okay, so if I may, a personal question. This was
Please.
not in the talking points. Are you ready?
Yes.
So when I was 18, I had a startup. We got some measly $80,000 funding. So, like pre-seed or whatever. Then some years later, we started a commercial production agency with a friend. We did one ad for a sports car company, and that failed as well. So I have a question, because you've done that 8 times, and in no way am I comparing your achievements to mine, but I'm just using the common denominator of trying, failing, trying, failing. I feel already slightly demotivated, or like I'm not, perhaps not cut out for entrepreneurship, but there's a lot for me to learn before I try again. How did you keep going personally? I'm not assuming that out of those 8 there were successes or failures. You're about to tell me that, but this is your 8th and this is your largest. So it took some grit to, keep going, and keep going.
It's an interesting question. I can try to answer it. Not sure if it will work for kind of everybody, but I mean, first of all, I'm obsessed. And I think like you have to be mentally a bit obsessed, to say the least, as a founder in order to do that. Second of all, that's what I know best. I don't think, and I'm not saying that there was many things I don't know as good, right? So I'm not saying this to self praise myself, but if you want to start up a company, call me. Right, this is just what I know. This is I'm very, very good at that, right? Bringing it then 10 years later to a certain level, that's what I not mean, but like really, really starting. So if you're really good at that, and of course you will find that maybe out after the second or the third one, you also get dragged into this, right? I was also working as a mentor for other startups and so forth and so forth. That's my passion in life. That's really what I like, what I love to do. And then you're not getting really attracted by other things, right? So of course, from occasions I got job offers to take a director seat here and there and do something, but that's kind of not really where my heart lies. And I've always been a person which really, I have to have like a gigantic passion for the project I'm working on. I can also only work on one project, so I'm not kind of a guy which can like do 5 companies at the same time and so forth. So it's certain it limits you. And I do also think the perception of failure is a very subjective thing. Like my kid brother, he also works for me. Actually, he's 12 years younger. He also works for Kontist right now. But he before that, similar to his older brother, had a bar, and it didn't really work out for him, as an example. And I remember telling him, it's like, don't worry, what do you care? This is a learning thing, It's just like, don't measure anything in your life on this thing. Some things work, some don't, but whether you think it is a success or not is purely defined in your head. Right? I don't care about what the rest of the world is saying. And I do think that the world actually perceives this like this as well. So if you're walking out, I mean, most of the company I've done still exists, actually, I think, except for one. So they're not necessarily, or most of them are not. Some at my previous company, Debitur, was sold to SumUp, so that's going fine. But like some of the companies, they today have still a couple of 4, 5, 6 employees or something like that. So they didn't become these big mega ideas I had originally in my head, but they're still existing, right? As such, is this now a success or failure? I don't care. I did my thing and stuff like this. No, it didn't turn out to be exactly how I have imagined it, but it has created a couple of jobs. I have learned something, and I think if people out of my friends and stuff, and that's the only people you should, if at all, care about, right? If they look at you, if they look at me, then they're basically saying, but I don't think that they're thinking Chris is a failure, right? Because this is like that was part of the learning. I don't perceive it as a personal failure. They don't perceive it neither. So I can only tell you in that case, it's just like, if it is a failure or success, that is you who defines that and nobody else.
And also what I'm hearing that's like a completely new thing that I haven't heard before is the way you talk about the companies that right now, so you're giving yourself this reality check where you're saying that perhaps they didn't grow up to be huge unicorn companies all over the news. I'm sensing that when you were working on them, you were treating them as if they were to become that tomorrow, so to say, if you understand what I'm saying, that you treated them as if they were to become the unicorn tomorrow. That's the kind of obsession that you speak of, right?
Exactly, but there I also learned, I have several times in my life on paper with the shares I had and stuff like this, been a multimillionaire and stuff like this. But I've also seen how these shares, like a year later, are worth almost nothing anymore and stuff like this. So I've also very much learned this. You can dream, and you should, right? You should have a vision of what you're going, where you're going and stuff like this. But take one step at the time. Right? For startups, it's important, and for the big majority, we always know the Facebooks and the Amazons and stuff like this. But the biggest part of startups fail. Right? I mean, I think after 3 years, 6 out of 4 out of 10 have actually failed. Maximum 2 out of 10 become some sort of a success and stuff like this. So we all know this, right? The important thing for me is always to say, like, how does my next year look like, right? Can I further grow? Can I take it to the next level? In the beginning, when I was 30, I was kind of dreaming about and was so happy about my valuation and this and that, right? Today, I have become much more humble, and I basically say, take one step at a time, get to something, create something cool. But whether it is cool or not, I'm not even sure if a unicorn, to be honest with you, is the coolest thing on earth, right? I have a different value set. I have different things. For example, now I hope that not too many of my investors are listening, but for me, it is at least equally important, how shall I say, what kind of company I've created in terms of the people working and stuff like this, right? Yes, of course, I want to get a nice check on a couple of million or 10 million on my bank account as well. Don't get me wrong on this one, and I'm not going to say the difference. But for me, not at every price. Right, and that's again back to the learning. I do think when you are kind of coming from university, you have these big dreams. When you get a bit older, you have a different perspective on it, and it gives you a lot of, in your daily job, it gives you a lot that you're doing this with other people and that you're changing the world, rather than that you're driving up the valuation and becoming a unicorn, because that as such does not change the world.
True. I mean, the only counter argument I could give here, if I were to play the devil's advocate, is that once you have the unicorn valuation and you have all of that money to deploy into the world, you have the potential to do more change, I guess. But sort of a chicken and egg problem.
But it's true. But I mean, now we're getting, of course, into the philosophies of that. But if I see Jeff Bezos, which I of course admire on a certain level as an entrepreneur and stuff like this, but I also read that a lot of people are kind of canceling their subscriptions and stuff like this because they're no longer okay with him flying to space and stuff like this, right? So it's you have to be you have to be a very morally clean person. Like I think Bill Gates and all his engagement and stuff like this are it's interesting for me, right? Yes, you can do a lot of good things with a lot of money, but then a lot of people will also argue, I mean, is this money not better spent in society on a different way than one individual spending it? I'm very much with you, actually. I've also set up a foundation, Kontist Foundation, where we actually work a lot in politics and trying to change kind of the rules for self-employed, because I'm always saying, I'm trying now for 15, 20 years to solve the problem of self-employed with software. But these problems wouldn't exist if politics had done their job right, and it would have not kind of created all these rules and stuff like this. So it's very important for me also to look at this political angle. And it is true, the more money I have, the more influence I can have on this level. But I think this example only works to a certain thing. I'm not sure if there was elections tomorrow in your country. Most likely you would actually, but if a lot of people would actually vote for Jeff Bezos as their president, right? Maybe, but maybe not.
Completely agreed on the idolatry of innovators. We have become slightly guilty of that as humanity as a whole. I'm not sure about voting Mr. Bezos into any political function, but for sure I'd vote him to be Santa. Like, come on, he has the he has the infrastructure. He has the infrastructure. One delivery for everybody in the world. Too easy. So one last question, slightly still on the philosophical front, before we dive into the company itself. You as a CEO, not necessarily just within Kontist, but over the years of sort of sticking to your value and never selling out for the money, what was the most challenging thing that you had to do, the most challenging decision that you had to take? Something that was at a crossroads of, this would be great, but I have a dilemma. It doesn't have to be necessarily a money-related dilemma, but you mentioned this strong commitment to your values against money. So, surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that fits well, and it's actually the beginning of the story I told earlier on. It's actually my last exit, which was also my first real one, was I wasn't the I'd helped them to build a company inside the company and stuff, I guess, but I wasn't the founder of the overall thing. We were like 8 people. It was a PE exit, and we got like a nice 8 people, got into a room, got a nice brown envelope with an amount of money on there, which would make us all pretty happy at the end of the day. And then they were asked one more time, shall we really exit? Shall we really do this? Lots of money. Yes, let's do this. And then just almost when leaving the room, they were telling us, oh, by the way, please fire 30% of your people. Okay, the new owner doesn't want them, right? And that's basically what you need to do for your money. And I felt really, really bad because I was just like, this is so unfair, right? I mean, I wasn't the founder neither, and stuff like this. So, but I'd helped this company to be one of the most successful Danish companies out there, and like all the people I've hired and stuff like this. Who am I? Yeah, I did part of this, and it's nice that they financially thought of me. But all the people I had hired and basically had contributed maybe much more than I to the success. And now I was supposed to fire them, right? And that has actually what was one of the most important. I've really for quite a long time I've been thinking about this. I couldn't end it. I was like 35 or so, and I didn't, I wasn't at all prepared for that kind of mentally. So I kind of did it or didn't do it, doesn't really matter, but I couldn't change the rolling of the wheels, but spinning of the wheels. But then afterwards, that is the foundation of my philosophy of saying giving back before. Because I've been thinking, like, in the startup environment, you basically are always, even today with Kontist and stuff like this, I have investors and stuff like this. If they pull their act together and stuff like this, they can do and force me to do many things which I would not want to do, right? I mean, I'm not going to say that I don't have an influence, but and it's down the line, shareholders and they can do a lot of things. But I've basically said, so I can never. I say this to most people actually joining the company. I tell the story in their face. And I basically say, I cannot promise you what the future will bring, right? But what I can promise you, that I can try to make this the best experience in your life, right? In terms of, because nobody can take the time away you've actually been working for a company. And that was the same at that company. I had to let these people go. It was actually one of the coolest company we ever worked for. And we are meeting still today regularly. We give each other jobs. We are still friends and stuff like this. And I understood that is something no investor, no shareholder, no external CEO or whatever can take away from you. That's the time you spend and you have with the company. And that's why this ambition for me is to basically say, let's make this awesome. That's kind of like, paying back before, right? Because then whatever the future might bring, that is basically on your bank account and can never bank account, not really, but on your personal account, sorry, and nobody can take that away from you.
I mean, if time is money, it's on your bank account.
That's true as well. Yeah.
So yeah, okay. So thanks for that. Good answer, A star. So now Kontist itself, an elevator pitch for me and the audience, if you could, and then I'll ask you some follow-up questions.
Okay, but it's quite straightforward. So Kontist, we are all for the freelancer, the home for the freelancer. We started with a bank account, but not just a regular bank account. From day one, we have basically been in real time calculating your taxes, like VAT and income tax. You know how it is as a freelancer. You get a lot of money on your bank account, but a couple of years later, the state is going to come and take a big chunk of it back. But you never know how much. Exactly. No, in Germany, that's actually why I'm saying that. In Germany, it's actually, the tax declaration can easily be 2 years later. So you have a lot of money which is actually piling up, which you have to keep track on and understanding and stuff for a very long time. So in that sense, the system is much more complicated than in most other European countries. So as such, really, we always kind of tell you on the bank account, that's yours. It's even called like this. And then we have buckets basically where you say, and that's for the VAT, that comes earlier, as you say, but the income tax part actually can be up to 2 years later. So that's what we're doing. Then we ventured, and that could be a very long story, but that's an elevator pitch. We ventured into the like full tax declaration. So we're offering now a tax service, so to speak, where we really kind of offer together with a tax advisory, like that, to do really your end of year tax declaration. And the very latest thing we've just launched is basically a completely automated bookkeeping tool as well, where you just have your banking transactions. All we ask you is do everything through this bank account with this Visa card, and then you don't have to take care of anything else. All the rest, we have the data, we do the rest for you.
So to compare two scenarios, me without Kontist, essentially, this actually is from the government. I just got it yesterday. This is me looking at documents, not understanding what's going on, versus me with Kontist. I don't even worry. I don't even care. Everything is taken care of. Almost everything is taken care of, right?
I think actually, literally, I'm just like thinking what it is. So you're spending whenever you spend money, you travel and so forth. You need to do this through the Kontist bank account and stuff, or pay with a Kontist Visa card, and then there is a receipt, and you please take a picture immediately when you do that. That's a lot of solution out there which do this real, but we have all the transactional data in real time, right? Remember also that we work, as I said, with Visa card. We have many more data than a regular accounting system. There's many who try to automate and stuff like this, but we as a bank, so to speak, have many more kind of data points. Then we can completely automatically do your things, and also the government, the German Finanzamt. The tax authorities and stuff like this, we have a background agreement with them. So all the letter from the tax authorities will no longer land on your desk. So the paper you just shown me would, if you're a Kontist customer, not land in your hands. They would actually land with the Kontist Steuerberatung, with the Kontist tax agency, and they would take care of, and you would, in most cases, not even notice.
Okay, I have a question with some burning childlike curiosity, but I need to ask you the next question. Keep that in mind for a second. So, other than the obvious congratulations on the 25 million euros funding, bringing your total to 37.5, Crunchbase tells me so. So, major congrats. But how was 2020? How's 2021? And about 2022, I'll ask you in a moment. But what's the 24 months like?
I mean, it was, I think, like 2020 was not, I think, it was the most crazy time of my professional career ever. Why is that? Because, as I said, we just ventured into this new tax service, and that was something which was under horizon in 2018, 2019. We had basically discussed we wanted to go this way, but in no way was that planned for 2020. Maybe 2021 or something like that, and we didn't really know how it would look like. But then came Corona. And it was really kind of very intense, right? Everybody was kind of, the self-employed got hit extremely hard. And as I said, we have this foundation. We worked like crazy, 20 hours over the weekend. We built tools for them so that they could set down their taxes, get government funding, petitions, and so forth and so forth. But one of the main findings at that moment was actually that today the government even requires that. At the time, it was advised that all this work to get like government aid and stuff had to go through the desk, over the desk of a tax advisor. Now in Germany, tax advisors are rare. I mean, there's as many, I think, as almost no other country. It's like 80,000 in Germany, but it's a very kind of broken industry, very not digital, very traditional. An average tax advisor, 150 customers. It's completely broken. And there's most of them, they're baby boomers, they go in pension right now. There's not a lot of people coming and doing that. So really finding a tax advisor for a freelancer to get this very much needed, fast needed Corona aid was a big problem. So what we did, actually, we started with a Corona aid service where we basically said we're going to help these freelancers, like legally, but also on the tax side, to get some like help from the government. And that then brought us with within, I think, 3 or 4 weeks, we were just like, okay, my God, this Corona, we need to basically adapt our business model, or we don't need to, but there's a great opportunity. So we completely changed plan and stuff like this, and said we will basically do what we had not even planned for this year now. We started, I think, with the first line of code in April, and had the first like 200 paying customers on our new tax service in August. So this was the fastest ever, and I think within this time period, 3 months, and we hired like 30 tech specialists during Corona. Nobody reset up a completely new company to actually build the complete infrastructure in an area also which is legally, nobody has done this before in Germany, so it's very difficult, challenging. It's more regulated, the German tax market, than the banking market, right? So many people don't understand that, but where we are actually in is a highly regulated market. The EU Commission is very much looking and saying to Germany, you have to open and you have to change. But it's one of these last monolith environments where basically foreigners are not allowed, where you cannot from Poland easily kind of offer your service to Germany. You have to have a special exam and a 4-year education in order to be a tax advisor. It's not everybody who can do that. So it's very, very different environment in Germany than in most other European countries where I have also been working and buying tax advisory chains before and stuff like this. So this is a great, of course, as you can imagine, opportunity, right? So we went in there, we set this up. Now today we had 150 people, of which half basically are tax specialists. So we moved from basically being an online neobank, right, which what it's worth to really being, we're still a neobank with all what's worth it, but we now have basically a second branch which is completely dealing with these tax and accounting challenges. And that within such a short time period. That's also then on the basis we raised our next round and so forth and so forth. That's really, I have never done something the like in my entire professional life. And that is also one of the learnings after 8 companies, right? Be super fast. Like, just do it. It was so much fun. It was exhausting as hell. But this kind of, you need to try it out. You need to dare it, launch the service, figure out that you can actually do it, even though it sounds completely impossible. There's a lot of legal work involved as well to making this work. But amazing year in 2021. We are basically now simply, there's still a lot of manual work going on in the back, of course, right? Now as I said, there's 70 people doing this and that. But of course, we are heavily investing into technology, AI and the likes to really make sure that we can actually handle the fast scaling kind of customer bases.
So you mentioned earlier when we were talking Kontist Foundation, and I tried to write it down word for word. Excuse me if I'm not quoting, but paraphrasing. You mentioned that the Kontist Foundation solving problems, especially for software freelancers. Is there some sort of huge division between let's say category number 1 freelancer, but software freelancer? Is that a different beast for the local regulations, or?
No, I think there was misunderstanding. The foundation solves actually like on a political end problems, tries to politically influence to solve problems for everybody. But we as Kontist, you are right. Focusing very much on IT freelancers. That's more out of kind of who is using our product. About 40% of our people are in the product dev engineering and. So we track. We have to, for as we are a bank and stuff like this, what the people are doing, and that's what they are doing and stuff. If you then take even a big larger like designers, marketeers, typically they also have to do with technology. Then we are like at 60-70%. It's an interesting question. We're discussing this quite often. Why that is? I do think like developers are just in our sweet spot because we can really almost completely automate. Right? They don't typically have so many transactions, to do. They are also typically in a high income state. right? So they really also, they don't mind spending a bit of money to get this worry out of their way completely, right? It's quite often also foreigners there, which really really need help to be a freelancer in Germany. It's as mentioned, not at all. It's one of the most complicated countries to do this from an administrational point of view. So in that sense, it's just, I think, a natural thing. And I also do think that, of course, when I talk to an engineer, to a developer and stuff like this, if I say to them, there, of course, we can completely automate the thing, then he or she is going to say, yeah, sure. I mean, there's no doubt about that, right? We're of course going to do that. And why wasn't that tool already there 10 years ago, right? Whereas if I talk to a midwife, to give a completely different example and stuff like this closeness to technology, I might first need to basically do some convincing that a machine can actually do this job better than a human, right? So that maybe explains why we have a pretty high run on more technical customers than, which is also, they are more early adopters, right? So, and we are in a completely new space. Nobody has ever done that before, not even internationally, actually. There's one US company which is going in this direction, but other than that, I've not yet heard anybody really going the full Monty between bank and taxes. So that's also something which needs a lot of explanation, actually.
Okay. There's one company we had the utmost pleasure of having the chief operating officer of Deal.com. So the company that makes employment itself possible for anywhere in the world. So that's an interesting space for sure. So before we dive into the industry, where we'll be speaking about the industry, but of course via the Kontist prism, I have one final question, and this is the curveball. This is the difficult one. I hope you don't hate me for this one, because what are the typical challenges that founders are facing right now? Hiring problems, and then when you do anything that is to do with regulation, expansion, because I'm hearing a lot about the German setup over there, right? You also told me that, for example, this document that went to me would in Germany somehow go to, you use the German word, I won't blasphemize the language that I cannot pronounce correctly. And I'm not sure, for example, that something like that would be possible in Poland, which leads me to the difficult question. Unless I'm wrong, tell me, how do you plan to overcome the fact that with expansion into every other country, you simply have the barrier of entry of getting to know the entire regulation, and perhaps at some point figuring out that the mission statement of Kontist cannot be delivered in this country because of how difficult the regulation is? I'm looking at my own home country over here, for example.
I mean, I'm very familiar. In my previous companies, actually, was also selling accounting solutions in Poland and stuff like this. So, in Poland and then all Western European countries, including and the US and stuff like this, I'm very familiar with. Right, as I said, because I've been selling accounting systems there, and I kind of know the problems. These are very local problems. I just looked into, we were last year, I looked heavily into like a partnership with an Eastern European bank, and therefore I went to the Czech Republic, Bulgaria, and a couple of other markets, and basically did a quick analysis on what their challenges are and whether we would be actually able to solve them. We would, but of course, you have to take every single market at the same time. I'll give an example. In Bulgaria, for example, the challenge is not at all the receipts, which is in at least Western Europe the big thing, because you have to keep all the receipts. In Bulgaria, it is okay to just have the bank account, and that is worth as a proof for you, right? So you don't have to keep all those receipts. So you can still do some of the same things, but actually, when selling the product, what's the USP? One of the main USPs in Germany would maybe not be one in Bulgaria. On the other hand side, there work very offline accountants there. So actually doing a fully automated accounting based on your banking would still be a very good value proposition. Okay. Very long story short. The international expansion is not particularly on our roadmap. Not that I wouldn't have done it. I've actually done it with 4 of my 8 companies across, as I said, sometimes the world, but in with my previous company I was in 26. But the main European markets were actually our main challenge. But I was talking about the tax advisory market in Germany. It's after the US, the second biggest in the world, like monetary-wise seen. We are talking, it's 8 times bigger than the German banking market for small businesses, right? It's so much more, the money people spend there. It's not like in average on a bank account, a customer spends in Germany 300 euros, including some, credit lines and basic, and then some fees for the bank and so forth. A small business, right? For the tax advisory, we're talking 2,500 euros. Okay, so it's so much more lucrative as a market, and it's so much more needs disruption that for the next 2-3 something years, we would definitely focus on the German market. Would it be interesting? I just saw that, for example, there's an interesting company in the Ukraine. I've forgotten the name. They're doing some certain things. So I do think there is a great opportunity. And if once we have made a really big success in Germany, thereafter, I would definitely know what to do in each of these markets. But that would then, we were talking about hundreds of millions of investment rather than 25. And a very wise guy, which is actually today, his company is today traded on the Nasdaq, once told me when he was doing international expansion, he was always saying, if €1 brings you further in the country you are currently in versus actually going to a new country, then rather invest it in the country you're currently in. Right. Only once you reach basically diminishing returns on your euro, and it would actually be bringing you more money in the new market, than go. And a lot of young founders, I have this feeling sometimes they need this for their ego, right? There's this like, oh, we are all over the world. This is so great. That's also something you learn as having found 8 companies, been there, done that, got the T-shirt. Now I focus on what makes economic sense for my company, right? And right now an international expansion doesn't make financial sense, and all the VCs actually agree with me on that.
That was a super insightful information on sort of every front that I could have wanted, with the timeline of the 2-3 years, with the VC recommendations, and with how you sort of corrected me or opened my eyes with regards to the fact that there are many markets where even if you're not bringing the full 360 of Kontist, that even just, let's say, 90 degrees of that still is a step up from what they have right now, like the example of Bulgaria that you mentioned, with accounting being done mostly offline. Okay. So in terms of Kontist, we also have one question from the audience. Tomasz asks about this. Kontist collaborates with many partners such as Solaris Bank or Go Cardless. And speaking of your mission to make freelancing as easy as being employed, which areas are still missing to make this mission complete? Which companies are to be added to the partners list? And maybe like a third question, you are in a dream. What happens ideally that would help Kontist go 360?
I mean, what partners are still missing? My very first business plan, there was always this idea of, like, for example, insurances is an important one. I just last week talked to a company which is offering specific freelance insurance via an API setup and stuff, and that's something which could actually be quite interested. What really definitely is missing, we have a credit line of like currently, but not really loans. That's something which we really have to offer it well. So insurances, loans, pension. Big topic. Health insurances, like it's all very, for the time being, very German, but most of this, for example, the health insurance systems in Germany works also with prepayments for freelancers, similar to taxes. So there's also a lot of innovation to actually have real-time declarations to the government telling you how much money you are actually making, so that you don't always have to make this high prepayments, stuff like this. But that's really, I think, the universe. We also been talking to some legal players, some legal assistance in this area is also something which we have been looking into. We have been discussing quite a lot with players like Deutsche Bahn or something, the train travel car, right? Some travel freelancers are quite often traveling. So in this area, it's also interesting to look into. So all the potential services, and I haven't named, I think, all of them, but which immediately come now out in my mind and stuff, areas we are looking into. From a financial point of view, they are not very interesting for us typically, because the margins you're getting there as Kontist and stuff like this are not particularly high. But from a for our customers, and that's our raison d'être and stuff like this, they are of course very good, because they help them. Factoring is another example. For example, they help them, they make their life easier, or give them access to capital and stuff like this. So that's definitely something which we would put on our roadmap. The real question for us, I think, like strategically seen, we have two areas which are kind of interesting. One area is basically, would we offer our services to other tax advisors in Germany? We have quite a few, and then that would be a very kind of different game than what which we are kind of playing today, where we only have like one tax advisor which does this, or one company, right? The other thing is basically, would we have regularly banks knocking on my door and basically saying, because can you offer this tax service also to our customers? So that is the two strategic, very interesting discussions which we are currently having in terms of like focus, or basically including other third parties in the services we are offering.
So also what I'm hearing, and I'm sort of eating up a question that I wanted to ask later, but you gave me the answer here, in terms of compete or collaborate, especially when you mentioned working with the tax advisors, it would sort of avoid the red ocean and perhaps some blue ocean approach, where they become the resellers, the distributors, and you just make their life easier. Because I'm pretty sure that whatever way or monolith system that they have in use today can't compete in terms of user friendliness with what Kontist is offering.
No, but we have a very special case in Germany. So if we were in the UK, I would definitely. So I've worked with big tax advisor association and tax advisor in Spain, in France, in the UK, in Scandinavia, Italy. So in the UK, for example, I always had these tax advisors. They're very technology driven. I loved it. They were pushing me as a like accounting firm at the time, and always say, Chris, come on, you guys must be doing more. We want to digitalize more. I want to serve more customers. Perfect mindset. I loved it, as you can imagine. And then we have the Germans. In Germany, you have one company called Datev. Every German knows it. It's a, I have 5,000-6,000 employees, a pretty big company, but in reality, it's an association. All the tax advisors in Germany own a stake in this company, so it's almost like a state thingy, right? So it's a collectively owned thing, and this is a monolith, a monopole in Germany, and they basically all tax declaration go through this system. Right, and that makes it very, very difficult actually to be innovative and do anything meaningful in the German market, because this one company, effectively a monopolist, dictates on anything. And they're not doing, they have a software which can do everything and so forth and so forth, and even we or the tax advisory and stuff like this has to use it. You cannot work in Germany without this, but that also because every tax advisor owns a stake in this, it very much stops innovation. right? Because the product makes a lot of money, and me as a tax advisor, on the one hand side, have to work with this. Oh, it hurts. It's not the very best. On the other hand side, I'm getting a check. So in that sense, it's, I think, the one biggest reason why the German tax advisory market is so technology unfriendly, because there's no competition whatsoever. One monopolist player basically makes it impossible almost. So what you're saying is theoretically true, but if it then doesn't work with this software, if it's not perfectly integrated in this, and the software supplier will of course make sure that it isn't, it makes it very difficult to actually enter this space in Germany.
I gotta ask, being the time police over here, are you booked for something at 11 onwards, or do we still have a couple minutes?
We can still have a couple of minutes. My call, I will quickly, my follow-up call, I will quickly tell him that I am a couple of minutes late, so no problem. Just go.
Thank you so much for this. So to wrap up all of today's conversation, when I asked you about expansion, or where I asked you about competitors, in one of your interviews, you shared that if the likes of Revolut or N26 were to launch a feature like this, because very often this is the concern, right? What if a big company can flip a switch and try to recreate my product? You said that they would not be able to provide such a focused, targeted proposition in the freelancer market because they try to do everything, right? Whilst here it's focus, focus, focus. And the quote goes that this is a strategy we are following: focus, 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 and then offer a broader offering for this group, and then start to monetize, rather than trying to serve a lot of people with a mediocre product. So that's the secret weapon, essentially, right?
Exactly. I mean, I think it's very clear to, like, who has done software before, or who has been in a niche market. You know, we are all niche players, private, and and stuff like this. So in a sense, of course, somebody which is offering you only looking at one target group can offer a much better tailor-made service than somebody who caters the mass market, right? The mass market has advantages as well. You can offer it quite often. I mean, as N26, completely for free. Our account is also for free, but of course, if you have millions and millions of customers, you can spread your costs across a bigger customer base, right? But a good example here in Germany is, for example, there's a bank specializing only on pharmacies and doctors and stuff like this, and of course, it's a bank which is used by my dad and my sisters are doctors, and of course they have their accounts there and stuff like this. It's just like, they know how to talk to doctors, right? And they have a couple of pain points when they get started with their praxis. They need some financing and this and that, and by really having tailor-made content and helping this group, you can serve them much better. If you're looking on the Kontist website, I don't know, we have hundreds, 500 maybe, I don't know how many articles over the last years in regards to topics for freelancers, right? Anything. We have knowledge base, we have a community around that, where we have a lot of offline events, we have a lot of videos, webinars. In Corona, as said, we have a foundation which helped them to even get a petition with the government, so that finally the government, after the summer, paid out a couple of €1,000 for each freelancer, and so forth and so forth. So all these kind of things you can do if you serve one narrow group and you really understand what their problems are, right? If even like I'm even saying, at Kontist we are very much focusing on that. If you have a GmbH, like a limited company and stuff like this, you will not be able to open a bank account with us. There are freelancers which basically also have like a one-man shows, but use a GmbH and stuff like this. But from an administrational point, the entire processes and stuff like this are just very different than if you are kind of a one-man show without a limited. So we are saying that's not our focus. We are focusing on this particular group, and we are trying to do anything and everything in every area to really have the absolute best and fitted product for this group.
Yeah, LLCs are a different species. I was looking into that here in Poland as well, but just like you said, not the easiest way. So, okay, I'll try to be rapid fire with this with respect to the next call that you have. So we have 3 questions. I'm combining an audience question with one of my own. Rafał asks, have you observed any increase in the amount of people switching their freelance careers to corporate jobs due to the pandemic? For example, looking for more stability or security in their jobs, because obviously what comes with flexibility is the fact that you're not that attached to something. And I would ask you to broaden the answer, if you could, to the future of work in general. COVID stays, COVID goes away. All of the things that we have sort of evolved over this time will stay with us, right? What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I do think first here to the question, it's still a bit too early. I've seen a couple of also like more as an employer actually than with my customers. I've also seen during COVID quite a few people jumped. It was easier to convince freelancers to be employed and so forth. But I don't. It's a mind shift set. So I think like crisis like we have right now might temporarily lead people to maybe accept a job or not. But I don't think, knowing from myself as well, that if you have once decided that that's your perspective on life, I think you will go on. But to answer your question, I do think that the future of work is going to be much more a mix between freelance and job and freelance and job. So I don't see this classical kind of career that you're just like, I'm a freelancer for 30 years and that's that, or I'm an employee for 30 years, that's that. I do think when I look at Kontist asset, we are kind of switching to a kind of remote first. We have like already our developers are all over the place. Now comes the rest. During Corona, I told everybody go to wherever. They went to Dubai, to the Canaries and stuff. A lot of people actually went and used this time to try out how is it to work abroad and be different, right? But now we have also really, we were saying we have all the meetings online. We're really kind of switching to a remote first environment. If you're thinking like that, and if you're also thinking, the philosophy which has already been at Kontist from before, I mean, I'm not checking when people come to work and when they leave, right? I mean, we're looking at the work they're doing and that they collaborate and how happy they are and stuff. But we had until recently, we've changed that because we had actually a free holiday policy. So you could take as much vacations as you would. That actually didn't work out well, both actually for freelancers and for self-employed. So we have the same rules. We treat freelancers. Nobody internally actually knows if you're a freelancer or if an employee, right? We don't make any difference. And I do think that is very much going into direction of the future of work, right? So there might be some reason why you are a freelancer and it makes sense and you're working for somebody, or it might make sense to be an employee. I do foresee a future where we don't differentiate so much anymore. But I do also think that both go a bit towards each other. I think some of the extreme freedoms which a freelancer sometimes uses might have been, I mean, they're quite often because there's a high scarcity in the market, and it's not necessarily what employers find the most to be blackmailed on that end the nicest. And on the other hand side, I do think that employees will need to get much more the rights of freelancer and much more freedom to do their job. So I actually see that both the freelancing world and the employment world is getting closer to each other. Maybe at some point in the future, as it is in Denmark, in a certain to a certain extent and stuff like this, you just have in your tax declaration, it's called an A income, and that comes from a salary, and as a B income that comes from being a freelancer. But other than that, the difference are actually very there are almost none, and I do think that could also be a very cool way of for us to go, right?
I mean, we at Netguru have the same approach that you mentioned at Kontist. So B2B, contractor, freelancer, whatever the name you choose versus employee, there's no versus, there's nothing against. Like it's just a matter of how you choose to do it. And I'm looking forward to what you mentioned, because essentially what is it about? It's typically about money, taxes, and notice periods. So the regulation here is sort of, we're waiting for regulation to catch up because everybody else is ready to move on. Okay, so the last two questions, and these are completely non-technical. Sorry, unless you wanted to add something on top of what I said.
No. I just wanted to say yes. It is very much. That's why, as I said, with the foundation and stuff, it's very much about like adapting the political system, right, to actually go there. Because I do think that most of us, I mean, now people working for Kontist, you, me, right, in this space, we are for a long time arrived at this point, but politics hasn't. Right? Politics is still thinking in kind of traditional labor, 9 to 5. That's how this is regulated. So it's really a huge political effort to actually change the system, much more than I think it's an individual effort or even an effort on a company level, because we have understood that for a while, I think.
Yeah, we're ready. We're waiting for you.
Exactly.
Regulation. So the last two questions, which are non-technical, they're light questions, and we ask this to all of our guests. So what is your decision-making framework? Any tips that could help other founders or anything really?
I don't have I don't have a framework as such, and not really. I'm not sure really tips, but I can add a controversial note to this discussion, which I actually just did in a recent LinkedIn post. I'm very much most of my professional life I've actually worked and lived in Scandinavia and in Denmark, married to a Dane as well. So I'm very much very Scandinavian and less German when it comes to that one. And I'm really a fan of consensus-driven decision making. A lot of people, particularly in Germany, but also more hierarchical countries, will I'm sure join in and stuff like this. Don't like that, right? They find this inefficient kind of, no, there is a decision maker in this space, and he or she should make this decision, and so forth and so forth. But I really do think that if you want to take people along, and that's down the line a cost which we are underestimating, right? We are thinking, it's hyper efficient. 3 people in a room, they were allowed to make this decision. We made this decision, and it was great. But we are not looking at the cost. The decision making process seemed to be fast, but you needed to take the people along, and that might actually take a long time. So I do think, and that's my personal philosophy, to say more to go involve people earlier in the discussion, have a more consensus. Yes, it might take 2 extra loops, but down the line you have everybody on board.
I'll admit I just tried to find that LinkedIn post that you mentioned, but even with translation, I'll need you to send me a link, which one it was.
It was actually about the last one, about why I don't like to have an office as a CEO, and why I still have one now. It's in German, but I'm not sure if LinkedIn already translates it. Otherwise, Google might need to do it. Yeah.
I'll do it. Okay, so the final question. I am giving you a magic wand, and with the magic wand, you can do an abracadabra, and every 12-year-old currently in the world can be taught something, not against their will, but they receive a sort of education. We've heard about empathy, we heard about design thinking, we heard about coding, we've heard about leave the kids alone, let them have a childhood. Well, I'm not waving the wand. So there's been many answers, and there's no right or wrong answer. I just want it to be yours. So tell me, what is the spell and why?
It's a very interesting last question. Being a father of 4 kids, as said, that's something I'm definitely thinking, and in the age of 15 to 5, so still fitting in this. I think what I would actually, the magic spell I would actually give, I would make everybody in the world speak one language. And I mean that literally. The knowledge of one language. If you if you have no imagination, then you would maybe say English, maybe Esperanto or something. That's not the important thing. The important thing is basically that it's one common thing. I do think that a lot of problems in the world is a lack of understanding and communication, and the big problems of this world and people dying and stuff like this very often is the root cause of that. So I think one of the Babylonian tower crashing, the problems at that point really started. It's super interesting, these different languages, but I think it would bring us as humanity to a completely different level if we could at least all speak the same language and understand each other better. Right? What is then possible beyond that? I think that would be great. Personally, a big fan, lived in many countries, love languages, and I think that would be a great contribution to mankind.
Solid answer. And if I may, Spanish sounds really nice as a language. So maybe
True.
Spanish, maybe Spanish.
True.
Zofia, our executive producer, usually lives in Spain, Madrid. So
I don't speak it, but I have had a lot of do in Spain as well. So it's true. I do speak French actually on a day-to-day level. I love that as well. And which one, as said, doesn't matter. Maybe and most likely it will have to be a new neutral one, so that nobody gets advantages or disadvantages.
As long as it's pretty and music to the ears. Anyway, Chris, like I said, I'll try to keep this as short as possible, but the conversation was just too great to cut it short. So thank you so much for being a great guest speaker. I will let you go to your next call. I'll be catching up with you via email. And once again, thanks so much for today.
Thank you, Philip. It was really a fun talk. Excellent. Thanks a lot.
I try. I'm happy that you felt that way. Thanks a lot and see you soon.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.